You move at night. 12 men in a single file, rifles at the ready, packs cutting into shoulders. The jungle presses close on both sides of the narrow trail. You are Viet Cong. You know this ground. You have walked it 100 times. Tonight feels different. The cicadas are loud, then suddenly less loud. A bird call stops in mid-cry. The man in front of you hesitates, just a fraction. You almost bump into him. The political officer told you about the Americans. You know their sound. Choppers, engines, the long whisper of artillery in the distance. They are noisy, careless giants, easy to avoid, easy to ambush. But this is not about the Americans. 3 weeks ago, another supply group used this trail. They never arrived. No gunfire reported by nearby units. No villagers heard a battle. The men simply vanished between one hamlet and the next. Some say they ran away. Others whisper another word. Ma. Ghosts. You reach the stream crossing, a familiar bend. Smooth rocks slip with algae, faint moonlight on the water. The point man steps into the shallow ford. The night erupts. Brilliant white flashes, claymores. A wall of pressure smashes through your chest. 4 seconds of pure noise and light. Then silence again. Only the echo of your own heartbeat. You fire into the dark, but there is nothing to see. No muzzle flashes, no silhouettes, just jungle and afterimages. By the time reinforcements arrive, it is over. Bodies in the kill zone. Empty shell casings in the leaves. Tracks that simply fade into the undergrowth. No prisoners, no captured weapons, no enemy bodies. Just a whispered identification from higher command. Not Americans, Australians, SAS, the silent ones. This is the story of the Australian Special Air Service, the ones the Viet Cong feared most. Battlefield is a character. Phuoc Tuy Province, South Vietnam. To a map reader, it is just a shape on paper. To the men who fought there, it is a living thing. Triple canopy jungle that blocks the sun. Vines like cables pulling at packs and webbing. Rotting leaves that hide punji pits, mines, and decades of discarded war. In the morning, mist clings to the trees like smoke. By midday, the air is so humid it feels thick enough to drink. Sweat never dries. It just moves from skin to cloth, from cloth to pack straps, forever damp. The ground is a patchwork. Rubber plantations with their neat rows turning suddenly into wild bush. Rice paddies open and exposed, ringed by tree lines that swallow men whole. Laterite roads, red and hard, scar the landscape and invite ambush. At night, the jungle changes again. Sound becomes sharper. The drip of water from leaves, the rustle of unseen animals, the distant bark of a dog in a hamlet miles away. The moon filters through the canopy in broken fragments, turning everything into black and silver. Beneath the surface, another world exists. Tunnels, bunkers, spider holes. Hidden kitchens whose smoke is filtered through layers of earth. Field hospitals tucked into hillsides. The Viet Cong do not just fight here, they live here. The jungle punishes the unprepared. Boots fill with water and rot feet from the inside out. Leeches find any gap in clothing. Insects burrow into sores. Malaria, dengue, and infection take as many men as bullets. For most armies, this terrain is an enemy. It hides ambushes, muffles movement, swallows formations. For a handful of Australians, it becomes something else. Not a battleground, a hunting ground. American main force contrast. The Americans arrive with strength. Battalions, companies, dust-off helicopters circling overhead, gunships on call, artillery grids ready to answer every contact. Search and destroy operations move out from fire support bases like great clumsy fists. Platoons push through the jungle in single file. 50 men or more, weapons high, rucksacks heavy. They talk over radios, over the noise of their own movement, over their fear. They carry enough ammunition to fight all day, enough food to stay out for a week, enough power to level a village. From the air, it looks impressive. Columns flowing along tracks, flares marking landing zones, smoke from artillery preparation drifting across the canopy. Domination by presence. But the jungle does not care. It carries sound for hundreds of meters. Viet Cong scouts hear the Americans long before they arrive. They unhook hammocks, grab rifles, vanish into tunnels and tree lines. Or they set ambushes, knowing exactly how a big unit will move along a trail. Heavy forces bring heavy signatures. Every extra man is another footfall, another canteen, another metal buckle that can clink at the wrong moment. The Australians watch and learn. They serve alongside the Americans. They see their courage, their losses, their frustration, and then they slip away from the big units. The Australian Special Air Service Regiment fights a different war. No battalions, no big sweeps. 4 to 6 men. Maximum stealth, minimum noise. Where the Americans try to crush the jungle, the SAS disappear into it. Where the Americans seek contact, the SAS avoid it until the moment is perfect. Find, fix, finish is the usual doctrine. The SAS modify it. Find, understand, choose, then finish. Unit origin and doctrine. The Australian SAS story in Vietnam begins long before their first patrol in Phuoc Tuy Province. Australia forms the Special Air Service Company, later Regiment, a unit built in the shadow of the British SAS, but forged in its own wars. Many of the early leaders have hunted communist insurgents in the jungles of Malaya and Borneo. They learned the hard way that in thick jungle, firepower is worthless without fieldcraft, that small silent patrols can do what battalions cannot. Selection is ruthless. Long marches under heavy load. Navigation across broken country with no landmarks. Sleep deprivation. Tests of initiative where failure is not shouted at, just quietly noted. Those who pass are not the strongest. They are the ones who keep thinking when exhausted, who stay calm when lost, who accept discomfort as normal. Training for Vietnam sharpens the edge. Patrols drill insertion and exertion until it's muscle memory. They practice lying motionless for hours. They learn to move in single file so tight that a 4-man element can vanish behind one small fold of ground. Core philosophy becomes simple, brutal, and clear. See without being seen. Hear without being heard. Control the fight before it begins. In Vietnam, their role on paper is reconnaissance and surveillance. In practice, it is more than that. They are the eyes and ears of the Australian task force. They map routes, camps, crossing points. They warn of ambushes before they happen. They interdict supply lines without ever announcing their presence. The regiment's doctrine rejects glory in visible victories. A perfect mission ends with no shots fired, yet changes the battlefield for weeks. If a firefight happens, it is because they chose it, not because the enemy found them first. Immersive movement POV. You are the second man in a 4-man patrol. It is your 3rd day out. You have slept maybe 6 hours in total. The jungle feels closer than it did on day 1. You move at a pace that would infuriate a conventional commander. 1 step. Pause. Listen. The point man is 5 meters ahead, just a shadow under the leaves. You watch his shoulders. A tiny flick of his hand replaces a shouted order. Stop, down, left, right. A whole language and gestures. You control your breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. No heavy exhale, no nervous sigh to carry on the still air. Your rifle is angled slightly down,
Safety off. Muzzle clear of vegetation. Your trigger finger rests along the guard, never inside. Muscle memory handles the weapon while your mind watches the world. You read sign as you move. A leaf turned upside down, still wet on the underside. Mud smeared high on a tree trunk where someone used it as a handhold. A faint, almost invisible trail where grass leans in a direction it should not. You smell smoke once, faint and old. You stop. The patrol kneels. The signal's radio operator slowly shrugs his pack off without a sound, adjusts a strap, moves again. Leeches wriggle across your socks. You feel one on your calf, fat and warm with your blood. You do not stop. You do not slap. Pain is information, not an emergency.
Hours pass in a rhythm of movement and stillness. You learn the jungle's voice, the normal sounds of birds and insects, the unnatural silence that means humans are near. At one point, the point man freezes mid-step. His fist clenches. You drop in place, heart racing. Then you hear it too. A faint clink of metal, a cough, quickly stifled, somewhere ahead and to the right. You stay where you are, a statue in green. You are 4 men alone in enemy territory, but you do not feel helpless. You know routes in and out. You know where you can disappear if it goes wrong. You carry the knowledge that you have done this before, and the enemy has not seen you yet. In this moment, patience is your deadliest weapon. Case Study A. Intelligence Mission. Late 1966, Phuoc Tuy Province. Signals intelligence and village reports hint that a Viet Cong base area forming in the hills north of the Nui Ding, too vague for artillery, too uncertain for a battalion attack. A 6-man SAS patrol is tasked to paint the picture. Insertion is simple. A helicopter pretends to insert them in one location, sweeping low, circling, kicking up dust. It lands. Troops jump off. The helicopter lifts. Noise and drama. But the real patrol stepped off 5 kilometers earlier, dropped at treetop height, fast and quiet. No one in the visible landing zone is going anywhere. They will be back in the perimeter by evening. The real hunters are already on foot. 2 days of movement bring them to a narrow ridge overlooking a suspected base area. They find a shallow scrape in the hillside, invisible from below, perfect for an observation post. They settle in. Camouflage nets blend with the foliage. Rifles rest within easy reach. Binoculars and a small, quiet camera come out of waterproof bags. For 72 hours, they become part of the hill. 2 men on watch, 2 resting, 2 in reserve. 4-hour rotations, cold rations, no cooking. Canteens sipped, not gulped. They watch the enemy's world unfold. Men move in and out of the tree line carrying rice sacks and ammunition crates. They count them, 20, 30, 40, eventually more than 100 different faces over 3 days. They identify platoon-sized groups forming and dispersing. They see a man with a map board and a pistol, others deferring to him. Commander, target 1. They watch guard routines. Sentries change every 2 hours. One section of perimeter is always weaker during that handover. At night, they see the faint glow of dug-in bunker entrances, light leaking under poorly sealed doors. They note tunnel mouths. They sketch every trench, every cooking shelter, every likely headquarters hut. Radio reports go out in the dead hours before dawn, whispered into a handset, coded and precise. 4 minutes on air, then silence. The Viet Cong never know they are there. A week later, an Australian infantry battalion, backed by armor and artillery, assaults the base area. They bypass the strong points. They neutralize key bunkers early. Pre-sighted artillery brackets the likely escape routes. The assault is not clean. No battle is.
But casualties on the attacking side are far lower than they might have been, because 6 unseen men had lived above that camp for 3 days. In a captured provincial report weeks later, a VC officer writes, "Recent enemy attack exploited weaknesses in our defenses we believed hidden. No reconnaissance was detected. We suspect invisible observation elements, not American, different, patient, fire discipline philosophy. In most armies, a good soldier is one who shoots quickly and often. In the SAS, a good soldier is one who does not shoot, not until the moment is right. Every patrol member carries a weapon he is trained with until it feels like a part of his body. He can strip it in the dark. He can clear a stoppage by touch. He knows his effective range by instinct. But the weapon is not there to make noise. It is there to solve problems when all the other tools fail. Body count is not their metric. Intelligence is. Freedom of movement is. The enemy's uncertainty is. You lie in wait as a VC squad walks past at 20 meters. You could kill at least 2 before they react. You could probably break them entirely with surprise. You do nothing, because your mission is to find their base, not inflate a tally sheet. A short, satisfying firefight would accomplish nothing but your own compromise. Fire discipline is more than trigger restraint. It is emotional control. It is putting the mission above the urge to act. This philosophy separates them from many allied units around them. American doctrine, under pressure from politics and command, leans toward engagement, toward showing results. The SAS answered to a different standard. Did the patrol return intact? Did they bring back information that changed operations? Did they restrict the enemy's freedom of movement, even if the enemy never saw them? When the SAS do decide to fire, it is never half-hearted. They seek overwhelming advantage, short engagement windows, clear fields of fire, planned withdrawal routes. If those conditions are not met, they let the enemy live. Not out of mercy, out of professionalism. A lit cigarette stub can scare an enemy unit more than a dead comrade. A single foreign boot print on a trail can make entire companies change their movement. An ambush not sprung can reveal a supply route leading to something much bigger. The SAS do not win by killing the most. They win by knowing the most and by choosing exactly when to turn knowledge into violence. Case study B. Ambush/interdiction. Early 1968, a narrow, seldom-used track snakes toward a shallow river crossing near the Cambodian border. Intelligence hints that it has become a route for weapons and explosives flowing south. A 5-man SAS patrol is tasked to interdict. They move in before dawn, circling wide to avoid villages and known Viet Cong positions. By mid-morning, they have found their ground. A gentle bend in the track flanked by thick scrub on one side and a small rise on the other. Classic kill zone. Claymore mines are emplaced with care. Wires run back to the firing point, buried under leaf litter. Fields of fire are marked in each man's mind. Left sector, right sector, center. No overlaps that risk friendly fire. No gaps that allow escape. Then comes the hard part. Waiting. Ants crawl over hands and necks. Mosquitoes search for skin under sleeves and collars. Leg muscles cramp. Bladders ache. No one moves. Hours stretch. Daylight fades. Night slides over the jungle. Near midnight, they hear the first sound. Soft, rhythmic footsteps. Murmured voices. The clink of metal on wood. Through night vision scopes and careful eyes, shapes materialize. A dozen men. Heavy packs. Weapons slung, not at the ready. They are not expecting trouble this deep behind their own lines. The patrol commander lets them file into the kill zone. 1, 2, 3. He watches the tail, waits until the entire group is inside the arc of claymores. Then, quietly, he presses the clacker. The jungle explodes into daylight. A wall of white fire and shrapnel tears down the column. Rifles snap into action. Controlled, deliberate. 4 seconds of sustained violence, then silence. No shouting, no screaming, no victory cries. 2 men cover, 2 sweep the kill zone, moving quickly, checking for signs of life, looking for documents, maps, codebooks. They grab packs heavy with ammunition and medical supplies. They confirm no one is in condition to fight back. 90 seconds after the first explosion, the patrol is already moving away along a pre-planned escape route. They change direction twice, climbing into thicker ground where tracks vanish quickly. 20 minutes later, they are gone. Hours afterwards, a VC reaction force finds the site. Bodies, blood, broken crates, no obvious firing points, no enemy dead. Just the aftermath of precise, one-sided force. Months later, an after-action report is captured from a Viet Cong district unit. The translated excerpt reads, "On the night of 12th, our transport detachment was annihilated on Route 46 by unknown enemy. No shots were heard before the explosions. Survivors report enemy fire from multiple directions, but no enemy bodies were found, and no positions could be located. Weapons and documents were lost. We believe these were the Australian reconnaissance troops. They attack with perfect surprise and withdraw too quickly for counterattack. They appear, kill, and vanish. Our soldiers are increasingly afraid to move along forest tracks at night when Australians are reported nearby."
Case Study C. When they are hunted. Not every day belongs to the hunters. Mid-1969. A 4-man SAS patrol is deep in Viet Cong territory. Their task? Confirm the existence of a new trail network linking 2 base areas and mark potential artillery targets. For 5 days, the mission runs to pattern. Slow, silent movement. Observation of small groups. Coded radio traffic in the early hours. On day 6, something changes. You feel it before you can explain it. The jungle's sound is wrong. Birdsong cuts off in a tight, moving pattern behind you. The point man raises a single sharp hand signal. Stop. The patrol melts into cover. You drop behind a buttress root, muzzle covering the approach. Every sense straining. Then, you hear it. Distinct now. Footsteps. More than a few. Not a drifting patrol. A group moving with purpose. On your back trail. The patrol leader makes a rapid, silent calculation. Contact now means being pinned by a larger force. The mission would end in a firefight, or in nothing at all if you managed to slip away. Either way, the enemy would know there are Australians here. He chooses another path. You do not run. You vanish. The patrol disperses by prearranged pattern. Each man moves less than 20 meters from his current position, seeking the best natural concealment. Deep shadows behind logs, hollows under banks, thick roots of strangler figs. You settle onto your belly in a shallow depression, face in the dirt, rifle tucked in tight. A leafy branch laid gently over your back. You control your breathing until it is so shallow you barely feel your chest move. Flies tickle your eyelids. Sweat trickles into your ears. Your nose itches with leaf mold. The Viet Cong trackers arrive. You hear murmured Vietnamese, a muttered curse, the rasp of a breath. They move along the trail you used hours earlier, reading sign just as you read theirs. One pair halts less than 10 meters from where you lie. You can see a sandaled foot, brown toes dusted with red earth. An AK muzzle swings across your field of view. You do not close your eyes. You do not flinch. Minutes stretch like hours. A twig cracks somewhere to your left. A VC voice calls out softly, questioning. Another answers, closer than you like. For 3 hours, they search. You hear them circling, doubling back, probing gullies and ridgelines, growing more frustrated. A distant shout, a single sharp cry, then silence. Later, you learn that one of the trackers tripped a small, old booby trap laid by their own side weeks before. The jungle is cruel to everyone. As dusk falls, the footsteps grow fewer. Voices fade. Eventually, even the forced quiet of hunted men gives way to the normal jungle chorus. The patrol leader waits 2 more hours before giving the signal to move. You ease out of your hide, muscles screaming after the long, enforced stillness. Instead of heading straight for extraction, the patrol arcs away, deeper into cover, then slowly curves back toward its original route. The mission continues. 2 days later, they complete their reconnaissance, mark grid references for artillery, and slip away to the pickup zone. When the helicopter finally lifts them out, they have achieved their aims and survived a close hunt without firing a shot. For the Viet Cong trackers, the experience is different. They have followed ghosts, found their trail, hunted them, and still never seen them. Psychological impact on enemy. Fear in war is rarely about what is known. It is about what cannot be seen, measured, or predicted. The Viet Cong expected to fear American air power, heavy bombers, gunships. They expected to fear tanks and artillery. They did not expect to fear 4 silent men with radios. Yet captured documents tell the story. A field directive from a VC provincial command, translated by Australian intelligence, reads, Australian long-range reconnaissance units present a special danger. Their presence cannot be detected by ordinary means. They move with the discipline of our best sapper teams, but are more dangerous because they avoid contact until conditions favor them conclusively. Engagement with these units should only occur when our forces have superior strength of 5-to-1 or greater. Otherwise, avoid. Another notebook taken from a captured commanding officer contains a blunt warning to subordinates. The Americans make noise. We hear their machines. We see their smoke and dust. We can prepare and avoid. The Australians do not. They have no pattern we can rely on. Sometimes our men die and no enemy is seen. Sometimes our camps are attacked at their weakest point, as if the enemy lived among us. Stories spread quickly in any army. In the mess lines, in the trenches, in the jungle clearings where units gather. Patrols begin to double their sentries at night when Australians are believed active. Supply units shorten their movement distances, refusing to travel entire trails in one journey. They detour around certain ridges and gullies where the ghosts were rumored to have been seen. Soldiers talk in low voices about comrades found dead on quiet trails, neatly shot. Pockets turned out. Documents missing. No shell holes. No explosives. Just surgical, close-range violence, and then nothing. The Viet Cong pride themselves on being the invisible hunters of the jungle.
For decades, they have ambushed larger, noisier enemies. They know every trick of camouflage and movement. To encounter another force that uses their own methods, then improves on them, is deeply unsettling. As one former VC officer would say years later in an interview, "The Americans we could understand. They were strong, loud, predictable. The Australians we could not understand. They fought like we were supposed to fight. Only quieter. Fear turns into caution. Caution slows operations. Slower operations mean fewer attacks, fewer supplies moved, fewer opportunities seized. The psychological impact of a small SAS presence ripples outward across the province. 4 dozen men in the jungle make thousands of others move more slowly, more nervously. The hunters have learned they are being hunted. Statistics block. Numbers do not feel heat or fear or exhaustion. But they help explain why a few Australians cast such a long shadow. Between 1966 and 1971, Australian SAS squadrons rotated through Vietnam, each conducting dozens of patrols in Phuoc Tuy and beyond. At any one time, perhaps 50 to 60 SAS troopers were in country. Of those, usually no more than 20 to 30 were on patrol in the jungle on a given day. 1% of the Australian Task Force's manpower. Far more than 1% of its impact. Over the course of the war, SAS patrols conducted hundreds of reconnaissance and ambush missions. Their confirmed contacts were relatively few compared to line infantry units. But the contacts they chose were decisive.
Kill ratios in recorded engagements ran into double and triple digits to 1. Part of that is the nature of ambush warfare. One side shoots first from prepared positions, the other reacts too late. Part of it is discipline. SAS patrols did not accept fights on equal terms. If the setup was not overwhelmingly in their favor, they disengaged and waited for a better opportunity. Beyond the direct casualties, their intelligence reports shaped dozens of operations. Mapped camps allowed artillery batteries to pre-plot targets. Identified crossing points became choke points. Patterns in enemy movement let commanders anticipate rather than merely react. One senior Australian officer would later summarize it this way: "On the books, they were a handful of men who killed a few hundred of the enemy. In reality, they were the reason whole areas stayed quiet, supply routes shifted, and enemy units rarely had the initiative in our province. They were a small force with outsized consequences." If firepower is measured in shells and bullets, the SAS rewrote the scale. Their crew weapon was information, multiplied by courage and patience. 4 men at a time, making an entire enemy formation feel watched, making 4 men feel like 400. The legend of the SAS in Vietnam is quiet and sharp. It can make the men behind it seem like something other than human. They were not. They were soldiers carrying heavy loads in cruel conditions, paying a price that rarely shows up in statistics. Heat rash that never healed, just spread. Tropical ulcers that ate into ankles and shins, bandaged in the dark and ignored. Leeches attached in places no man wants to think about, swelling fat with blood before being burned off with a cigarette tip. Boots rotted from constant damp, feet softened, blistered, cracked. Every step a reminder that the jungle wins eventually. Sleep came in shreds. An hour here, 90 minutes there. Always with at least one man awake, scanning arcs of darkness, listening for the footstep that did not belong. Some patrols went days without hearing another human voice at normal volume. Whispers only, hand signals, eyes doing most of the talking. The isolation bit deep. 4 or 5 men alone, knowing that if things went badly, the nearest friendly face might be kilometers away, behind enemy lines, with a helicopter that might not reach them in time. You learn who you can rely on very quickly. Who stays calm when the radio hisses with half-heard orders? Who keeps scanning when everyone else is exhausted? Who carries the extra batteries without being asked? Who quietly takes the heaviest claymore on top of his own load because someone else is limping? Trust stops being a word. It becomes a fact you live or die by. One SAS veteran would later say, "I was never braver than anyone else. I was just too stubborn to let the bloke next to me down." That was the worst fear, really. Not death, failure. They came home lighter, harder, older than their years. Many spoke little of what they had done. The jungle stayed with them in other ways. Startling at sudden noises, waking from sleep at the slightest sound, feeling uneasy in crowds where they could not see every approach. Yet along with the scars came pride, not loud, not boastful, a quiet knowledge that, when tested in one of the most unforgiving environments on Earth, they had done the job well. They had looked after each other. They had remained professional when panic would have been understandable. In the end, that brotherhood mattered more than kill ratios or commendations. The man in front, the man behind, 4 minds moving as one. In a war of ideology and politics far above their heads, they had one simple loyalty: each other.
The war ended. Governments changed. Flags were lowered and raised. Phuoc Tuy's trails were swallowed by new growth. The jungle reclaimed its scars. But echoes remained. Around the world, Special Forces units studied the lessons written in those shadows. Small team reconnaissance, minimal signatures, fire discipline over firepower. Intelligence first, violence last. Australian SAS methods informed doctrine far beyond Southeast Asia. Desert units learned from jungle hunters. Urban operators borrowed from men who had once listened to the silence between trees. Yet the clearest measure of their legacy lies not in manuals, but in the words of those who once tried to kill them. A former Viet Cong platoon leader interviewed decades later. "We feared many things: bombs, hunger, disease. But among the enemy soldiers, the Australians were different. They did not waste lives, theirs or ours. When they attacked, it was because they had a reason. When they left, it was like they had never been there. We respected them as professionals." Another veteran, once a district-level staff officer, remembered, "Our commanders told us, if you must fight Americans, you can choose to fight or run. If you meet Australians, you run." That was the rule. On the Australian side, a former patrol commander summed up his memories in simple terms. "We were just doing what we were trained to do. We weren't superheroes. Most of the time we were tired, wet, and a bit scared. But we trusted each other, and we took the job seriously. If the enemy respected that, then we did something right." There are no perfect wars.
only imperfect men trying to do difficult things as well as they can. The Australian SAS in Vietnam did not turn defeat into victory. They did not rewrite history on their own. But in a corner of a hard, complicated conflict, they showed what a handful of disciplined, patient professionals can achieve. For the Viet Cong who walked the trails of Phuoc Tuy, the memory lingers. Sometimes the jungle was just jungle. Sometimes it watched back. In the shadows of Phuoc Tuy, they became something beyond soldiers. They became ghosts.